Hi guys, how's it going? Ivano here with my guide to the Darkness Assassin for PvP. First of all, I want to say thanks to Beoknis and Doxic for the help with this guide. As always, there is also a written version available on my Substack, which I will link in the description below. But without further ado, let's talk about Darkness and of course also its Republic Mirror class, Kinetic Combat Shadow, which are the only tanking disciplines in the game that have access to stealth. And this unique combination makes them one of the best classes in the game for defending objectives and also winning at hardball. As a tank, Darkness excels at keeping teammates alive and annoying opponents with crowd control. You have two options for your tactical. Do you want to focus on survival and objectives? Go for 2 cloaks, which gives you a second use of your force cloak. Do you want to stay in the fight and maximize your DPS? Go for overwhelming offense, which gives you a stacking buff of up to 5% extra damage done as long as you keep hitting people. The first legendary implant for this build is Shadowcraft, which grants you 100% critical hit chance for 6 seconds after using Phantom Stride from stealth. Very powerful during your opener or after using Force Cloak offensively. For your second legendary, I recommend running Force Training, which increases your force and melee damage by 3%. Nothing too special, but more damage is always good. You can also run Stimulated instead of Force Training. Based on my testing, the difference in DPS is not really noticeable. As with most classes, if you are running without a healer, you can substitute your second legendary for the second wind implant. Taking a look at the gear and stats you want to run. We are going to be building a skank tank setup, which means even though we are playing as a tank, we will use DPS gear and DPS stats. And this is because not only is doing maximum damage so important in the current expansion, but also because tank stats such as defense or shield rating don't really work against many of the meta classes such as PowerTech, PowerTech or Madness Sorcerer. Those classes do mostly internal or elemental damage, which cannot be defended or shielded in PvP. And this is why we will instead maximize our damage by running full DPS gear. The only exception is our offhand, where we will be equipping a shield with DPS mods. This makes us very tanky against anything that isn't internal or elemental damage, because just by having shield offhand we get 20% shield absorb, which synergizes well with our Dark Ward and level 15 passive, both of which give us shield chance for free. For your stats, you want to get your alacrity rating to around 2150. This will lower your global cooldown to around 1.4 seconds, and it also lowers a bunch of your offensive cooldowns. For this, you need 2 alacrity enhancements, your legendary implant, and 3 superior or golden alacrity augments. Once you have that, you want to get your critical rating to around 4800. This will make your shock hit pretty hard. And to reach that, you need 5 critical enhancements, the earpiece, your Shadowcraft legendary, and 11 superior critical augments. And finally, just a note, since tanks get a passive 10% accuracy, you do not need any accuracy rating on your gear. Taking a look at the build, at level 23, Chained Bolts gives you some extra cleave damage on your depredating bolts. The radius for this is only 5 meters from your primary target, but if your enemies stack, it can add quite a bit of damage. Level 27, you have 2 options here. Take Spike if you want more CC to peel for your teammates, or just want to be a general nuisance, or take Energized Shock for the 50% extra critical hit damage on Shock. Personally, I prefer to do maximum damage, but Spike can be a valid option as well. Level 39, there are 2 choices here again. Twilight Ward for the reduced cooldown on Recklessness, meaning more damage, or Gloom Ward for reduced cooldown on your Mass Taunt. Personally, here I prefer the second option because it's crazy how fast you can have your Mass Taunt back, but Twilight Ward certainly works as well. At level 43, Dark Forces synergizes very well with Gloom Ward. To maximize the heal you get from this, use Mass Mind Control together with Wither and Depredating Volts, because the more people you hit after a Mass Taunt, the more you will heal. Alternatively, you can run Overcharge Saber if you need the damage reduction and instant heal because you are being targeted a lot. Level 51 I take Dark Stability because while you don't get stunned all that often these days, there are situations such as walking over a trap in Hutball where you simply must avoid getting stunned at all costs, and the 30% stun damage reduction is not going to save you anyway. Fade is also an option, but in most games I prefer Dark Stability. Level 64, while stuns are not as common as they used to be before Legacy of the Sith, roots and slows are everywhere. And that's why taking Force Phase is a must for PvP. Level 68, I take Overload, which is great for peeling melees off your teammates. The knockback route can also be used to push opponents into the hardball traps or off the bridge in Voidstar. And level 73, Avoidance is the best choice overall because it gives you 3 separate effects: lower cooldown on your force speed, 2 seconds of your interrupt, and 30 seconds of the cooldown of your CC breaker. Reaper's Rush lets you use Assassinate during your opener, which is very nice for burst. Shroud of Madness is useful for purging damage over time effects and making sure that you stealth out clean. But you can also do that with Force Shroud, and in general I like staying in the fight as a tank and also being mobile, so I run with Avoidance. Okay, let's talk about how to do damage. You want to start most of your fights with a combo of Phantom Stride from stealth to proc your legendary, followed by Assassinate if you picked Reaper's Rush. If you didn't, you can use Thresh and trying to proc an energized shock. Next you follow up with Recklessness and Shock, then use Depredating Volts, and finally you can use Wither. This combo takes advantage of the 100% critical chance from your Shadowcraft legendary implant, and as you can see it can hit for 250k damage in 6 seconds or around 43k DPS, which is pretty crazy for a tank. PvP is dynamic, which means that people run away, use defensives, etc, etc. And this is why in PvP we are using a priority system instead of a fixed rotation. The good news is that this system is very simple to use once you memorize the order. It works like this. If you can use ability number 1 on the list, do it. If it is on cooldown or you cannot use it right now for a different reason, use ability number 2. And if you cannot use ability number 1 and 2, use ability number 3 and so on. So you basically just go down from the top of the list to the bottom. And for Assassin Tank, the priority is as follows. First of all, you want to use Assassinate. Now of course, you can only use Assassinate when your target is below 30% HP or if you picked Reaper's Rush at level 73. Assassinate does great damage, so if it's available, you should take the chance and use it. Second priority is Shock, which can hit for upwards of 100k if you picked Energized Shock up at level 27. It also gives you a stack of Harness Darkness, your level 73 passive, which buffs the damage of your Depredating Volts. And that's also why you want to prioritize Shock over anything that isn't Assassinate. Your third priority is Depredating Volts. It hits for around 4 times 20k damage and also slows its target by 50% for the duration of the channel. Note that it's an overall DPS gain to use it on cooldown and not wait until you have the 3 stacks of Harness Darkness. Priority number 4, Wither, also provides a stack of Harness Darkness and slows the enemies by 30%. So it's a great ability to use if you can hit 3 or more targets. Darkness Discharge is another area of effect ability that reduces the target's melee and ranged accuracy by 5%. Its damage is increased by 75% when you shield, parry or deflect an attack, because of the level 60 Lightning Reflexes passive. So if the ability glows and you can hit 3 or more targets, go for it. If none of the higher priority abilities are available, you want to use one of your fillers. Those are Thresh, if you can only hit a single target, or Lacerate if you can hit multiple targets. Both have a chance to proc your level 51 Energize passive, which resets the cooldown of your shock and turns your next shock into an auto crit. Energize is also the reason you want to use Recklessness with shock, since the passive also grants it an extra 50% critical damage. Finally, remember that Assassinate will always trigger Energize, which is another reason why it's priority number 1. Finally, some gameplay tips. Guard is one of the most powerful abilities in the game, and if you are not using it, you're trolling. it redirects 50% of the damage your guarded target takes to you, which makes them very hard to kill. So drop it on your healer before the start of a match and swap it to one of your teammates if they drop low. Remember that you can apply guard from 30 meters away, but the damage redirection effect only works if you are within 50 meters of your target. Tip number 2, Dark Ward should be used in stealth before the fight. It lasts for 20 seconds or until all the stacks are used up by taking damage, so remember to refresh it frequently. Tip number 3, with Shadowcraft, Force Cloak resets the cooldown of your Phantom Stride, which means you can use Cloak offensively to get another 6 seconds of 100% crit chance by using Force Cloak, Phantom Stride, and then going into the opener combo described earlier. And tip number 4, staying in stealth just before pulling the ball carrier into the hardball traps is great fun, so I recommend trying that out. That's all for this guide, guys. If you have a question, leave them in the comments below. As always, when I publish a guide, there will be some Assassin Tank gameplay coming out over the next couple of days. So make sure you leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.